The courtroom was cold and sterile, with polished wood that reflected the harsh fluorescent lights overhead in ways that made everything seem harsher than it actually was. I sat there in my best outfit, the one I'd bought months ago for a promotion interview I never got, and I felt completely out of place. Everything about this room felt hostile and unfamiliar. My sister Vanessa stood across from me, her hand raised slightly, holding a piece of paper like it was a golden ticket to everything she'd ever wanted in her entire life. She was smiling that smile, the one that had irritated me since we were kids, since we were playing in my mother's backyard, and she would take my toys and claim they were always hers. That smug, satisfied smile that said she'd already won before the game even started. That smile that said she knew something I didn't know. That smile was confident and cruel and absolutely certain. "Finally, your house is mine," she said, loud enough for everyone in the courtroom to hear. The words hung in the air like a physical thing, like something you could actually touch. She waved the deed copy back and forth like it was a trophy she'd just won at some competition I didn't know we were entering. The paper rustled in the quiet courtroom. Several people turned to look at her. Her confidence was absolute and unshakable. It was like she'd already moved in, already picked out new paint colors for my walls, already planned which furniture was going where and which furniture she would throw away. The judge looked at me over his glasses. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many cases like this one. His expression wasn't sympathetic. It wasn't encouraging. It was the look of someone who'd heard this kind of story 1,000 times before, and he was exhausted by it all. His eyes said he'd already decided something important, and nothing I could say would change his mind. That look terrified me more than Vanessa's confident words. My attorney, Harper, was sitting next to me. She was wearing a gray suit that matched her gray eyes perfectly. She'd been my attorney for exactly 7 days. I'd hired her after I realized what was happening, after I understood that my family wasn't just having a disagreement with me. They were actively, deliberately, systematically trying to take away my house. Harper was young, maybe 40 years old, with short, dark hair and a no-nonsense expression that didn't waver. She leaned over to me very carefully, and her voice was barely a whisper. "Your husband signed something," she whispered. Her words were barely audible, just a breath really, but they hit me like a physical blow to my chest. Those words contained volumes of information I wasn't ready to process. Your husband signed something. 3 words that changed everything about my understanding of what was happening. I looked at Brandon, who was sitting on the other side of the courtroom with his mother, Bev. He wouldn't meet my eyes. That was the thing that really told me everything I needed to know. My own husband, sitting with my sister's lawyer, wouldn't even look at me. His jaw was clenched tight enough to hurt. His hands were folded on his lap, knuckles white. He was staring at his shoes like they were the most interesting thing in the entire world, and he couldn't look away. Vanessa was still smiling that terrible smile. She caught me looking at Brandon, and her smile got even wider. She knew something I didn't. She had information that I hadn't been given. She was enjoying this moment completely. I could see it in every line of her face. She was having the time of her life, watching my world start to collapse around me, watching my confusion and fear. The judge banged his gavel once, softly, like he was annoyed at having to be here at all. "We'll hear opening statements," he said. His voice was gravely and tired. He sounded like a man who smoked too much and drank too much coffee. He sounded like someone who had seen too much of human nature's worst side. "Let's make this quick." I felt like I was drowning. Around me, the courtroom seemed to tilt slightly. The walls were closing in on me. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, pounding loudly. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. But the courtroom was very real. The judge was very real. Vanessa's smile was very real. And my husband, refusing to meet my eyes, was very real too. "My name is Holly, and I'm 50 years old. I work hard, always have, every single day of my adult life. I've taken double shifts at the hospital where I work as a registered nurse. I've worked holidays and weekends and holidays again. I've worked when I was sick, when I was exhausted, when I should have been resting instead. I've worked when I wanted to do anything else in the world besides go to the hospital. This house is the only thing I've ever really owned. Not in the sense of having a piece of paper that said it was mine legally. I mean in the sense of having something that felt truly mine in my heart. Something I'd earned completely on my own. No one gave it to me. No one helped me with the down payment or the closing costs. I saved for years and years, working those double shifts, skipping vacations, skipping new clothes, skipping anything that wasn't absolutely necessary to my survival. I bought this house when I was 45 years old. I remember the day I closed on it like it was yesterday. It was a Tuesday afternoon in September. The sun was coming through the windows of the real estate office, and the closing attorney handed me a set of keys. Those keys felt heavy in my hand. They felt important. They felt like proof that I'd done something real, something substantial with my life. The house is nothing fancy or extraordinary. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a middle-class neighborhood on a quiet street. It has a small front porch where I sit in the mornings with my coffee before my shifts, watching the neighborhood wake up. It has a backyard with an old oak tree that probably dates back 40 years. The paint needs touching up on the north side of the house. The roof probably has another 5 years before it needs replacing. But it's mine. Every inch of it belongs to me. Or at least it did before all of this started happening. Vanessa has always been jealous of this house. That's the thing about my sister that I've always known deep down. Wanting what I have is her hobby and her obsession. She sees something I own, something I've worked for, and suddenly she needs it desperately. She's always been like that since childhood. When I got my nursing degree, she decided she needed to go back to school. When I bought my first car, she needed a new car too. When I got promoted to charge nurse, she suddenly decided she needed a leadership position at her job. But a house is different from those things. A house is something bigger and more meaningful. A house is something that matters in ways that cars and degrees don't. A house is where you live. A house is your home. Vanessa married Bev's son. I'm not even sure I should call Brandon my husband anymore after everything that's happened, but technically we're still married. We got married 15 years ago. It was a big wedding at my mother's church. Vanessa was my maid of honor, standing next to me on the most important day of my life. I had no idea then what would happen in the future. Had no idea that marrying Brandon would eventually give Vanessa access to the papers I kept in our shared filing cabinet. I had no idea that Brandon would eventually sign things without telling me about them. When I looked at Brandon in that courtroom, when I saw him sitting with his mother and my sister, when I saw that he wouldn't even look at me, I realized something that broke my heart. I realized that I'd been a fool. I'd let the person I trusted most have access to the thing I valued most in the entire world. Vanessa claimed with absolute certainty in her voice that made it sound like the truth, that I had promised her the house. She said I'd promised it to her in exchange for her help during what she called a hard year in my life. Her voice was so confident, so absolutely sure, that for a moment I wondered if maybe she actually believed what she was saying. Maybe she'd convinced herself it was true. Maybe she'd told this story so many times that it had become real in her own mind somehow. My mother, Donna, was sitting in the gallery behind me. She nodded when Vanessa made this claim about me promising her my house. Just a small nod, barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't looking for it, but it was there. That nod said that my mother believed Vanessa's version of events completely. That nod said my mother thought I had promised my house to my sister. That nod was a betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. My father, Harold, was sitting next to my mother. He wasn't nodding, though. He was just sitting there, looking ashamed of something but still present in the room physically. He was there, but he wasn't really there emotionally, if that makes sense to anyone. He was in the room, but he wasn't supporting me. He wasn't fighting for me. He was just existing in the same space as my mother, as though his presence without his support meant something. Vanessa was dressed well for this courtroom appearance. She'd taken time with her appearance and preparation. She had her hair done professionally, her makeup was perfect, her nails were manicured. She looked like a person who was confident in her position. She looked like a person who'd already won this battle. My sister promised me the house. Vanessa said to the judge. "I've been helping her for years through everything. She asked me to help her through a difficult time, and I said yes without hesitation. I was there for her when no one else was. I was there for her when she needed me, and she said she would give me the house as a thank you for everything." That was completely, absolutely, totally false. Every word was a lie. I had never said any such thing. I had never promised Vanessa my house. I had never said anything even close to that. But in that moment, in that courtroom, I had a terrible feeling that it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter what I had or hadn't said. It would matter what could be proved. Harper stood up from her chair. She was my attorney, and she had a calm, controlled manner that I was starting to really appreciate. She didn't yell. She didn't get emotional. She didn't let Vanessa's lies rattle her. She just asked simple questions in a quiet voice. "When exactly did my client promise you her house?" Harper asked. Her voice was neutral. She wasn't accusing anyone. She was just asking a simple question. Vanessa hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second, she hesitated. But it was enough. Everyone in the courtroom saw it. The judge definitely saw it. Her confidence wavered for just a moment. "It was about 2 months ago," Vanessa said. She was less confident now. Her voice had lost some of its certainty and confidence. Harper nodded slowly. She made a note on her legal pad very deliberately. Then she said something quietly to me. "We need the notarization record today." That was when I understood that this was serious. This wasn't just my sister trying to cause trouble or make my life difficult. Someone had notarized a deed. Someone had officially recorded a document claiming that I had transferred ownership of my house to my sister. Someone had done the paperwork to make this look legal. Someone had made this feel real and official. The question was, who had done this? And more importantly, how had they done it? After the court hearing ended, my sister's best friend Bev was waiting for me outside the courthouse. Bev is Brandon's mother, and she's always been the kind of woman who smiles too much and means none of it. She hugged me, but the hug was too tight, aggressive almost. It was like she was squeezing information out of me, squeezing secrets and weakness. "Don't make this ugly," she whispered in my ear. Her voice was sweet, like she was giving me good advice, like she was on my side. But the words were a threat. "Don't make this ugly" meant don't fight back. "Don't make this ugly" meant accept what's happening to you. "Don't make this ugly" meant surrender. Brandon was standing nearby, waiting for me. He'd followed me out of the courtroom. He said something about settling this whole mess. "Just settle," he said. Like settling was the easiest, most rational choice. Like fighting for my own house, like insisting that something that belonged to me was actually mine, was somehow unreasonable. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and I saw something I didn't like. I saw someone who'd already made his choice. He'd chosen his mother over me. He'd chosen to sign something without telling me. He'd chosen to sit on the other side of the courtroom, refusing to look me in the eye. That was when I decided I wouldn't settle. That was when I decided I would fight back with everything I had. Harper texted me that night. Just a simple text message, but it contained information that changed everything about my understanding of the situation. The text said, "The deed was recorded 2 months ago." 2 months ago. I had to think back carefully. 2 months ago, I was out of state. I was attending a mandatory work training session. I was gone for 5 days, and during those 5 days, something happened. Something that would change the course of my entire life. I pulled out my phone and checked my calendar very carefully. Yes, 2 months ago, I was definitely out of state. I had the hotel receipts in my email. I had the badge logs from the training center. I had email confirmations about the training sessions. I had documentation of exactly where I was and when I was there. And yet, according to the deed that Vanessa was now claiming as her own, I had been in town. I had signed a deed. I had witnessed and notarized it. I had done all of this while I was sitting in a hotel room 3 states away, attending a medical training session. The timeline didn't match. The location didn't match. Something was very wrong here. I called Harper. It was late, but I needed to talk to her about this. She answered on the 3rd ring, like she'd been waiting for my call. 2 months ago, I said. That's when the deed was recorded? Yes, Harper said simply. I was out of state, I said. I have documentation. I know, Harper said. "I saw it in your file. That's going to help us. But Rachel, we have another problem." "What?" I asked. "The deed is signed by you," she said. "Someone signed your name on that deed." I felt cold run down my spine. Someone had forged my signature. Someone had created a false document with my name on it. Someone had committed fraud, and they'd done it while I was 3 states away. This wasn't a family argument anymore. This was a crime. The next day, I got a call from someone I didn't expect to hear from. Gwen is a loan officer at the bank that holds my mortgage. She and I had met during the closing process on my house, and she'd been helpful and professional during that entire experience. Now she was calling me with what sounded like bad news. "Holly," she said, and I could hear tension in her voice, like something was very wrong. "I'm calling because something unusual has been happening with your mortgage file." I sat down immediately. I had a feeling I didn't want to be standing when I heard what she was about to tell me. "Your mortgage file was accessed," Gwen said carefully. "Someone requested payoff information and a transfer packet. That means someone was looking at the possibility of transferring your mortgage to a new owner." The words hit me like a physical blow. Someone had been looking at transferring my mortgage. That meant someone had been planning something big. That meant this wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment family fight. This was planned carefully. This was organized systematically. This was a deliberate, calculated attempt to take my house from me. "Who?" I asked immediately. "Who accessed the file?" "That's the thing," Gwen said. "That's why I'm calling you. The request came from an email with Brandon's name on it. Brandon, my husband, the man I'd trusted with everything. The man I'd given access to my personal papers. The man I'd let have a say in my life." "Are you sure?" I asked. "I'm sure it was that email address," Gwen said. "But Holly, I wanted to call you personally because this seemed wrong. The request seemed unusual. The way it was worded seemed wrong, like someone was trying to get information they weren't supposed to have." I thanked Gwen for calling me, and I hung up the phone. Then I sat there for a very long time, just trying to process what I'd been told. My husband had requested information about transferring my mortgage. My husband had accessed information about taking my house and giving it to someone else. That evening, I confronted Brandon about this. I showed him the information from Gwen. I asked him to explain what was happening. Brandon insisted that his mother, Bev, had asked him to get the information. He said that she'd told him she was just trying to get paperwork together to protect the family from something. He said, protect, like it was a shield, not a weapon. He said it like it meant something good was happening. "Your mom asked you to get information about transferring my mortgage?" I asked. "She said it was paperwork to protect us," Brandon said. He wouldn't look at me when he said it. He was looking at the floor, at his hands, at anything except my face. I realized in that moment that my husband had been lied to. Or maybe he'd just been too willing to believe a lie from his mother. Either way, he'd signed up for something without understanding what it was. He'd given his mother access to information about my house, and that information had been used to try to take it from me. That night, I searched our computer very carefully. I was looking for something. I wasn't even sure what. Evidence. Proof. Something that would explain what was happening to my life. I found it in our documents folder. A folder labeled Holly House Options. The folder on our computer contained things that made my blood run absolutely cold. Inside were screenshots of my deed. Inside were my tax records. Inside was a budget spreadsheet titled Post-Transfer, which outlined what would happen to my house and my property after it was transferred to someone else. And there was a sticky note. A physical sticky note that must have been photographed and scanned into the computer. It was written in handwriting I recognized immediately. It was my mother-in-law's handwriting. Bev's handwriting. The sticky note said, "Court Angle Works." Court Angle Works. That meant they'd been planning this carefully. That meant they'd known from the beginning that this would end up in court. That meant they'd been prepared for a legal fight. That meant they'd done something they knew was wrong, and they'd prepared for the consequences. I showed this folder to Harper. I showed her everything, the screenshots, the budget, the sticky note. I showed her the evidence of a conspiracy. Harper looked at all of it very carefully, and then she said something very quietly. She said, "This is coordinated." Coordinated. That was the word for it. This wasn't just one person acting alone. This wasn't just Brandon making a mistake. This wasn't just my sister being jealous. This was multiple people working together with a plan, with documentation, with a timeline. This was a conspiracy to take my house. I started gathering documentation immediately. I went through every email I could find. I looked at every text message. I looked at every note and record I had. I was building a timeline. I was building a case. I was building proof. What I found was worse than I'd expected. There were emails between Brandon and his mother, discussing my house. There were text messages between my sister and my mother-in-law, coordinating their efforts. There was a whole network of people who knew about this plan. A whole network of people who decided that it was okay to try to steal what was mine. My own family, my husband's family, people who were supposed to love me, people who were supposed to have my back. They'd all decided that it was okay to try to take my house from me. I felt sick. I felt betrayed. I felt like my entire world had been a lie. But I also felt something else. I felt anger. I felt determination. I felt like I was going to fight back with everything I had in me. My family started building a narrative. They were trying to control the story. They were trying to make me look bad. They were trying to make me look like someone who was confused, someone who was forgetful, someone who couldn't be trusted. My mother, Donna, was calling relatives. She was telling them that I was confused, that I wasn't thinking clearly, that I was probably experiencing some kind of mental health crisis. She was painting me as someone who needed help, not someone who was being wronged. My sister, Vanessa, was saying that I was forgetful, that I forgot promises I'd made, that I forgot conversations we'd had. She was building a case that would make anything I said seem like the confused ramblings of someone who wasn't all there. They were coordinating everything they said. They were telling the same story to everyone. They were building a narrative so carefully, so deliberately that it was clear they'd talked about exactly what they were going to say. I was starting to feel like maybe I was the crazy one. Maybe I was imagining this. Maybe I was misunderstanding what had happened. That's when my friend Paige called me. Paige and I have been friends since college. We've known each other for 30 years. She's one of the few people in my life who I trust completely. She called me, and her voice sounded worried about something. "Holly," she said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to know that I'm telling you this because I love you." My heart started beating faster. "Okay," I said. "Your sister tried to get me to witness something," Paige said. "She came to my house about 2 months ago. She had a document with her. She said it was just confirming your wishes, and she wanted me to witness it." I couldn't breathe. Vanessa had tried to get Paige to witness a false document. Vanessa had tried to forge not just my signature, but also the signature of a witness. "What did you do?" I asked. "I felt the trap," Paige said. "I felt something off about it." I said no. I told her I wouldn't do it. I felt a wave of relief. At least one person had seen what was happening. At least one person had said no. "But Holly," Paige continued, "she got a witness anyway." "Who?" I asked. "Your mom," Paige said. "Your mother witnessed the deed." My mother had witnessed a false deed. My mother had been a witness to fraud. My mother had actively participated in the attempt to take my house. I met with Harper again, and I brought her everything I could find. I brought her the emails. I brought her the sticky note. I brought her screenshots of the folder on the computer. I brought her documentation of the timeline. I brought her the information from Paige about my mother witnessing the deed. Harper reviewed everything very carefully, and then she said something very quietly. She said, "This is coordinated. This isn't just your sister trying to take your house. This is your entire family, working together, with a plan trying to take what's yours." Coordinated. That was the word I was using now, too. It was a coordinated effort. It was a conspiracy. It was multiple people, all working together, all playing their part. What I couldn't understand was why. Why would my family want to do this to me? Why would they risk everything to take my house? Later I would find out the answer. But for now, all I knew was that they had done it. They had tried, and I had to stop them. Harper was building a case. She was following the evidence. She was creating a timeline. She was documenting everything. She was preparing for trial. But I was starting to understand that this trial wasn't just about a house. This was about something bigger. This was about trust. This was about family. This was about what happens when the people you love decide that taking what you have is more important than loving you. My mother was calling relatives regularly. She was telling a story. She was saying that I was confused, that I wasn't thinking clearly, that I was probably experiencing some kind of mental health crisis. She was painting me as someone who needed help, not someone who was being wronged by her own family. My sister, Vanessa, was reinforcing this narrative consistently. She would tell people that I was forgetful, that I'd forgotten about promising her the house, that I was just having a hard time accepting what I'd already agreed to. She was building a case that would make anything I said seem like the confused ramblings of someone who couldn't be trusted. They were tag-teaming everything. They were working together perfectly. Whenever I tried to tell my version of the story, their version was already out there, already being repeated, already becoming the accepted truth. This was insidious in a way that the forged deed wasn't. The forged deed was a crime. This was something else. This was manipulation. This was character assassination. This was an attempt to make me look like the bad guy. That's when Paige sent me a message. She was warning me about what was coming next. She said, "Your sister tried to get me to witness something." I refused. I understood what she was really saying. She was saying that she knew what Vanessa had done. She was saying that she was on my side. She was saying that she would tell the truth. But more than that, she was warning me about what was coming next. She was warning me that my family was going to try to paint me as the problem, and they were already doing it. Paige called me again, and this time she had more details about what Vanessa had done. She said that Vanessa had shown up at her house with a document. The document looked official to her. It had all the right formatting. It looked like something that should be signed. Paige said Vanessa had smiled and said it was just confirming Holly's wishes. Just confirming my wishes. As if I'd wished to give away my house. As if I'd want to transfer ownership to my sister. Paige said she felt the trap immediately. She said she knew something was wrong. She said she refused to sign. She said she told Vanessa no, and she didn't even look at the document. But here's what Paige told me next. But she got a witness anyway. That meant Vanessa had found someone else who would witness the deed. That meant Vanessa had continued the process even after Paige refused to help her. That meant there was a witness to a false document. That meant someone had knowingly participated in fraud. That someone was my mother. When Paige told me this, I felt a deep, profound sense of betrayal. My own mother had witnessed a false deed. My own mother had participated in the attempt to take my house. My own mother had looked at a document that didn't actually represent what I wanted, and she'd signed her name to it anyway. "Your mom witnessed the deed," Paige said quietly. I couldn't respond. I couldn't say anything at all. I just sat there, processing the fact that my own mother had betrayed me so deeply. Harper explained to me that having my mother listed as a witness on the deed was actually a problem for Vanessa's case. She wasn't a neutral witness. She was invested in the outcome. She had a stake in the outcome. She wasn't an unbiased third party. She was my mother. Someone who would naturally want to help her daughter. Someone who would have her own interests in the matter. The courts notice when family members stack the witnesses like this. The courts notice when people are using relatives to make something look legitimate. It's a red flag. It's a sign that something might be wrong with the whole thing. "The fact that your mother witnessed this is actually going to help us," Harper said. "Because it shows a pattern. It shows coordination. It shows that multiple family members were involved in this." That made sense. It made sense from a legal perspective, but from an emotional perspective, it was devastating. My mother had betrayed me. She'd signed a document that was designed to take my house. She'd known what she was doing. Harper was building a timeline. She was documenting the relationships between the people involved. She was showing how my mother and my sister and Bev were all connected. She was showing how they'd all worked together to try to take what was mine. But Harper also asked me something that I wasn't prepared to answer. She asked, "Do you have proof that you never intended to transfer your house?" It was a good question. It was a necessary question. It was a question that would determine whether I could win this case. I had to think about it very carefully. Did I have proof that I'd never intended to transfer my house? Did I have documentation of that fact? I spent that night going through my emails. I was looking for something specific. I was looking for any communication where I had explicitly said that I was keeping my house. Any message where I'd made it clear that my house was not for sale, not for transfer, not for giving away. And then I found it. I found an email I'd sent to Brandon. I'd sent it right before my work trip, right before I went out of state for the training. The email said, "This house stays in my name, no exceptions." The email was dated right before my trip out of state. It was dated just days before the deed was supposedly signed. The email was clear and unambiguous. It said, "This house stays in my name, no exceptions." I showed it to Harper. She read it, and then she said something that made me feel a little bit better. She said, "That email might save you." But then she said something that made me feel terrible again. She said, "Unless they forged a second version. Unless they forged a second version. Unless they'd created a fake email. Unless they'd created a fake version of something I'd written and changed the words to make it sound like I'd said something completely different." I thought about the people I was up against. I thought about my family. I thought about their willingness to do whatever it took to win. I thought about the fake deed. I thought about the fake witness. I thought about all the lies they'd already told. And I realized that yes, they could absolutely forge a second email. They could absolutely create a fake version of something I'd written and make it look like I'd said something completely different. The question was, would they? And more importantly, would a judge believe a fake email, or would a judge believe the real one? Harper assured me that we could verify the email. We could check the email server. We could look at the metadata. We could prove that the email was real and hadn't been altered. But until we did that, there was uncertainty. There was doubt. There was the possibility that they'd thought of this too. There was the possibility that they'd already created a fake version of my email, and they were ready to submit it as evidence. That's when I realized something. I realized that I was no longer fighting against my family. I was fighting for my life. I was fighting to keep the one thing that was truly mine. I was fighting against people who had no scruples, no moral boundaries, no limits to what they would do to take what they wanted. And I was going to have to be just as strong, just as determined, just as relentless as they were. Vanessa's lawyer submitted a document to the court. The document was supposed to be a written agreement between me and Vanessa. It was supposed to be a contract where I promised to give her my house. But there was something wrong with it. The signature didn't look right. The handwriting was off. The ink was a different color than the ink I used. The spacing was too clean, too neat, too perfect. It looked like someone had tried to copy my handwriting, but they'd done it too carefully. A real handwritten signature is messy. A real handwritten signature has quirks and imperfections. A real handwritten signature looks like something that was written quickly and naturally. This signature looked like something that had been carefully copied. It looked fake. Vanessa was in the courtroom when they submitted this document. She was smiling. She was grinning like she'd just submitted proof that she'd won. She looked confident. She looked like she thought this was the final blow. She looked like she thought I was going to lose. Harper looked at the document and she said something very quietly. She said, "We're requesting handwriting comparison." Handwriting comparison means that an expert would look at the signature on the fake agreement and compare it to my real signature. The expert would be able to tell whether the signature was real or forged. The expert would be able to prove scientifically whether I had actually written that signature or whether someone else had written it. If the expert said it was forged, then the whole agreement would be meaningless. The document wouldn't be worth anything. It would just be another piece of evidence of fraud. But what if the expert said it was real? What if the expert said that I had written that signature? What if the expert said that I had agreed to give my house to my sister? I felt panicked. I felt like I was losing control. I felt like no matter what I did, my family had already thought of it. My family had already prepared. My family was already one step ahead of me. But Harper was calm. Harper was focused. Harper was building a case brick by brick, evidence by evidence, fact by fact. Harper was going to prove that this signature was forged, and she was going to prove that my entire family had conspired to try to take my house. And I was going to win. The pressure campaign started right after I filed my court papers. Bev, my mother-in-law, showed up at my job. She didn't come to see me. She came to see my supervisor. She ran into him, or at least that's what she made it look like. But I knew it wasn't a coincidence. She was spreading concern about me. She was telling my supervisor that I was under stress. She was implying that I might not be reliable. She was trying to damage my credibility at work while simultaneously trying to take my house. The embarrassment burned hotter than the anger. I work at a hospital. My job requires trust. Patients trust me with their medications. Patients trust me with their health. My supervisor trusting me is essential to my job. And now my mother-in-law was trying to undermine that trust. It was genius in a terrible way. If she could make me look unstable at work, then she could point to that instability as evidence that I was unstable in general. She could say that my own employer didn't think I was reliable. She could use my job performance against me. My supervisor called me into his office. He asked me gently, "Are you okay at home?" He wasn't accusing me of anything. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was just asking if I was okay. He was concerned. He'd been told that I was under stress, and he was checking on me. I wanted to cry. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to tell him about the conspiracy. I wanted to tell him about my family trying to take my house. I wanted to tell him about Bev coming to talk to him, spreading lies and insinuation, but I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them win. I went home that night, and I started organizing everything. I gathered all my documentation. I gathered my travel records. I gathered my badge logs from the training. I gathered copies of every email. I gathered the sticky note. I gathered the forged deed. I gathered everything. Then I made an appointment with my HR department. I brought all my documentation with me. I explained the situation calmly and professionally. I explained that my family was in a legal dispute with me. I explained that they might try to spread rumors about me at work. I explained what my mother-in-law had done when she came to speak with my supervisor. I controlled the narrative. I told my story first. I didn't let them tell it for me. I didn't let the rumors spread before I had a chance to explain what was really happening. HR was sympathetic. HR understood that this was a legal matter, not a work matter. HR understood that Bev had crossed a line by coming to my workplace. HR assured me that my job performance was what mattered, not rumors from family members. I felt better. I felt like I was taking my power back. That night, Brandon said something to me. He said, "Mom thinks you're trying to ruin her." I looked at my husband, and I realized something. I realized that he was still defending his mother. He was still taking her side. Even though everything that was happening, even though it had become clear that his mother had been manipulating him, even though it had become clear that she'd used him to try to take my house, he was still defending her. "Your mom is trying to ruin me," I said. "And you're helping her." He didn't respond. He just looked away. Vanessa escalated her campaign. She filed for an emergency order. The emergency order was supposed to preserve the property, which sounds reasonable. But what it really meant was that she wanted access to my house now. She wanted to be able to go in whenever she wanted. She wanted to be able to start taking things. And she showed up at my house with a locksmith. She showed up with an invoice for a locksmith, like she was planning to change the locks. I was there when she arrived. I stood on my porch and watched her pull up with a stranger, a man with a locksmith kit in his hand. I watched her walk toward my front door like she already owned the place. I called Harper immediately. "She's here," I said. "She's trying to change the locks." "Don't let her," Harper said. "Don't touch anything. Don't intervene. Just document it. If she touches anything, we file immediately." So I stood on my porch and watched. I watched as my sister tried to change the locks on my house. I watched as a stranger, a locksmith, started to work on my front door. But he didn't get far. I'd already changed the locks. I'd had a locksmith come out days ago and change all the locks on my house. So when he tried to work on the door, he couldn't get in. Vanessa looked furious. She looked like she'd expected to waltz right in and take over. She looked like she'd expected me to just let her do it. I stood there, on my porch, watching her realize that she couldn't. I stood there, watching her face fall. I stood there, watching her defeat, however temporary, and I took a picture. I documented the entire thing. Harper had told me to document everything, and I did. I started sleeping with my documents in a bag next to my bed. I was afraid they'd break in and steal my papers. I was afraid they'd destroy evidence. I was afraid they'd burn my house down just to spite me. I started photographing every room in my house. I was documenting what I owned. I was creating a record of everything in my home. If they tried to take things, if they tried to destroy things, I would have proof of what was there. I started making lists of all my valuables. I started creating an inventory. I started treating my own home like it was a crime scene that needed to be documented. I felt crazy. I felt paranoid. I felt like I was losing my mind. But then I realized something. I realized that this was what they wanted. They wanted me frantic. They wanted me emotional. They wanted me making mistakes. If I fell apart, they could point to my falling apart as evidence that I was unstable. So I stopped. I took a breath. I made myself calm down. Yes, I was afraid. Yes, I was worried. Yes, I was stressed. But I was going to be strategic. I was going to be careful. I was going to document everything without letting the fear consume me. That night, my alarm code failed. I tried to punch in my code, and it didn't work. Someone had changed my alarm code. I felt a surge of panic. Someone had access to my alarm system. Someone had been able to change my security codes. I called the alarm company immediately. The alarm company told me something terrible. They said that my security code had been changed, but I hadn't changed it. They said that the primary account email had been changed, but I hadn't changed that either. They said that the new email wasn't Vanessa's email. They said it wasn't Brandon's email. They said it was a different email address entirely, but I recognized the email format. I recognized the style. I recognized the way it was structured. It matched the style of Bev's business email. It matched the way Bev formatted her email addresses. Bev had changed my alarm code. Bev had taken control of my security system. Bev had made it so that I couldn't arm my alarm, couldn't disarm my alarm, couldn't control my own home security. This was getting worse. This was escalating. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about access. This was about control. This was about Bev being able to get into my house whenever she wanted. I called Harper. They changed my alarm code, I said. Okay, Harper said. That's actually good for us. That's evidence of criminal intent. That's evidence of someone trying to take control of your property. Criminal intent. That's what this was now. This wasn't just a civil matter. This was criminal. This was burglary. This was trespassing. This was a crime. Harper said, "We're filing a motion. We're going to tell the judge about the alarm tampering. We're going to ask for an emergency order to stop them from doing anything else." Harper filed a motion with the court. The motion was clean. The motion was factual. It contained no drama. It just stated the facts. It said that someone had changed my alarm code without my permission. It said that someone had accessed my security system without authorization. It said that someone had tried to change the locks on my house. It said that there were conflicts in the witness credibility, meaning that the people claiming to be witnesses to the deed couldn't actually be trusted. The motion asked for a temporary order. The temporary order would prevent anyone from changing the locks, changing the alarm code, or doing anything else to my house until the full hearing. The judge granted it immediately. The judge looked at the evidence and he said, "No one changes locks or alarm codes on disputed property without a court order." I felt a surge of relief. I felt like someone was finally listening to me. I felt like someone was finally seeing the truth. Harper was building a case. She was following the evidence. She was creating a timeline. She was documenting the conspiracy. And slowly, piece by piece, she was going to prove that my entire family had conspired to try to take my house. After the court hearing, my father pulled me aside. He was shaking. He looked scared. He looked like he'd been carrying a weight that was too heavy, and he finally couldn't carry it anymore. Harold said, "I didn't know they'd go this far." Those words meant something. Those words meant that my father knew something was happening. Those words meant that my father had known about the plan. Those words meant that my father had allowed it to happen. But he was saying that he didn't know they'd go this far. He was saying that they'd escalated beyond what he'd agreed to. He was saying that the conspiracy had grown into something bigger than he'd wanted. I wanted to be angry at him. I wanted to yell at him. I wanted to tell him that he should have told me. I wanted to tell him that he should have stopped it. But instead, I listened. Harold looked around to make sure no one was listening. Then he said, "Bev paid for your sister's lawyer." Those words changed everything. Bev had paid for Vanessa's lawyer. Bev had financed the entire attack against me. Bev had funded the conspiracy. Bev had hired the legal team that was trying to take my house. That meant Bev had a motive. That meant Bev wanted something. That meant Bev expected to get something out of this. Harper subpoenaed the payment records. She subpoenaed bank statements. She subpoenaed every financial record she could find. What she found was proof. The checks traced back to Bev's account. Vanessa claimed she was doing this on her own, but the money came from Bev. Vanessa claimed she was the wronged party, but she was being funded by her lawyer's mother-in-law. The motive became clear. Bev had hired a lawyer to help her son's wife take my house. Bev had paid for the entire conspiracy. Harper said if Bev financed this, she expected something back. Bev expected to get something out of this, but what? That's when we found out. We discovered a home equity application draft. It was never finalized, but it existed. The application used my address as collateral. Someone had tried to use my house as collateral for a business loan. The debt was tied to Bev's company. Bev's company was failing. Bev needed money. Bev needed collateral. And Bev needed my house. The plan became clear. Take my house away from me. Put it in Vanessa's name. Then use Vanessa's house as collateral to pay off Bev's business debts. I wasn't just being attacked by my family. I was being attacked because I had something valuable, and they were desperate. Bev's company was failing. Bev needed money. Bev saw my house as the solution to her problems, and she was willing to involve the entire family to make it happen. Harper said, "This changes everything. This gives us motive. This gives us a reason for why they did this." It gave us more than that. It gave us the entire picture. It gave us the truth. Brandon's lawyer was contacted by Harper's law firm. The message was clear. Brandon had a choice. He could be a witness, or he could be a defendant. Brandon had authorized forms, he'd signed things, he'd given his mother access to documents. He'd participated in the conspiracy, even if he didn't fully understand what he was doing. Now he had to decide what side he was on. Brandon's lawyer advised him to tell the truth. Brandon's lawyer advised him to cooperate with the investigation. Brandon's lawyer advised him to separate himself from his mother as quickly as possible. So Brandon started talking. He started telling Harper everything he knew. He started explaining how his mother had manipulated him. He started explaining how she'd made it seem like she was just trying to protect the family. He admitted that he'd given his mother access to my mortgage information. He admitted that he'd signed authorization forms. He admitted that he'd participated, even if he didn't fully understand what he was participating in. And he admitted that he knew it was wrong. The courtroom was full again. This time, everyone knew what was at stake. Everyone knew that this wasn't just about a house. Everyone knew that this was about truth and lies, about right and wrong, about justice. Vanessa took the stand. She tried to pivot. She said, "Holly promised me the house because she couldn't afford it. She was lying. Her face said she was lying. Her voice said she was lying. Her words said she was lying." Harper stood up. She was calm. She was focused. She was ready. Harper took out my payment history. She slid documents across the table to Vanessa. The documents showed every mortgage payment I'd made. The documents showed that I'd paid every single payment. The documents showed that I'd never missed a payment. The documents showed that I could absolutely afford my house. The judge looked at Vanessa and asked, "Then why the alarm change?" That question hung in the air. That question said everything. That question asked Vanessa to explain why someone had changed my alarm code if I'd promised her the house. That question asked Vanessa to explain why she was trying to take control of my home if I'd willingly agreed to give it to her. Vanessa couldn't answer. She had no answer. The judge saw her struggle to come up with something to say. And she lost. The notary was deposed. Under oath, she admitted that she hadn't verified me properly. She admitted that someone had vouched for me. She admitted that someone had rushed the signing. She was pressured to admit who had vouched for me, who had confirmed that I was who I said I was, who had allowed the signing to proceed even though proper verification hadn't been done. The answer was Brandon. Brandon had vouched for me. Brandon had said that I was who I claimed to be. Brandon had allowed the notary to proceed with signing a document that wasn't actually signed by me. Brandon had helped commit fraud. Vanessa offered a settlement. She said that if I paid her a moving fee, if I let her take some furniture that she deserved, she would drop the claim. She would stop fighting. She would let me keep my house. It was a generous settlement in her mind. It was me buying back my own house for a small fee. Harper looked at the settlement offer, and she said, "They're settling because discovery is about to expose the fraud." Discovery means the full investigation. Discovery means all the documents coming out. Discovery means all the emails, all the texts, all the proof of the conspiracy coming into the public record. Vanessa knew that if we went to discovery, everything would come out. Everyone would know what she'd done. Everyone would know about the forged deed, the fake witness, the authorization she'd manipulated Brandon into giving, the conspiracy with her mother and Bev. So she was trying to settle. She was trying to make the whole thing go away. But I wasn't gonna let it. I wasn't gonna let her buy my own house back from me. I wasn't gonna let her get away with this. Harper told Vanessa's lawyer, "We're not interested in settling." Harper pulled phone location records. Brandon had voluntarily provided these records because his lawyer had advised him to cooperate fully. The records showed where Brandon's phone had been at every moment, and the records showed that Brandon had been at the notary office on the day the deed was supposedly signed. But the records also showed that I hadn't been there. My phone location data showed that I was 3 states away, in my hotel room, at the training center, at the medical conference. 2 truths can't occupy the same hour. I couldn't be in 2 places at once. My phone showed I was 3 states away. Brandon showed he was at the notary office. And yet the deed claimed that I had been at the notary office and signed it. That meant the signature was forged. That meant Brandon had allowed a forged document to be created. That meant the entire chain of evidence showed fraud. Harper said, "Now we ask for sanctions." Sanctions are punishments. The court can sanction someone for fraud. The court can make them pay for the other side's attorney fees. The court can make them pay additional penalties. Vanessa was going to pay for this. The judge reviewed everything carefully. The judge looked at the travel proof showing I was out of state. The judge looked at the forged agreement with strange ink and odd spacing. The judge looked at the notary failure. The judge looked at the alarm tampering. The judge looked at the financial records showing Bev had paid for the lawyer. The judge looked at the application draft using my house as collateral. The judge looked at all of it, and the judge said something to Vanessa. "You may have legal exposure beyond this case." That meant the judge thought Vanessa might have committed crimes. That meant the judge might refer this case to law enforcement. That meant Vanessa might face criminal charges. The courtroom was silent. Everyone understood what the judge had just said. Everyone understood that Vanessa was in serious trouble. The judge ruled. The court voided the transfer attempt. The court ordered the deed corrected. The court ordered the records cleared. The court referred the notary issue to the state bar for review. Vanessa's claim collapsed. The entire attempt to take my house fell apart. Vanessa's lawyer was silent. Vanessa was silent. The people who'd been cheering her on, the people who'd been helping her, the people who'd been conspiring with her, were all silent now. And outside the courtroom, Vanessa whispered something to me through tears. She said, "You think you won?" Wait, it was a threat? It was a promise that this wasn't over. But I didn't care. The court had spoken, the law had spoken, I'd won. Vanessa tried one last thing. She tried to smear me with family gossip. She started rumors. She spread lies. She tried to make me look bad. But gossip doesn't matter when you have paperwork. Rumors don't matter when you have court orders. Family drama doesn't matter when you have documented fraud. The ruling was paperwork. The ruling was not opinions. The ruling was facts. I changed every access point legally. I changed the alarm code. I changed every password. I changed the locks with court permission. I secured my house completely. Then I started separation paperwork from Brandon. I realized that I couldn't trust my husband. I realized that he'd participated in the conspiracy, even if it wasn't entirely intentional. I realized that I had to separate myself from him to protect myself. My sister walked into court claiming my house. She walked out with nothing but her own receipts, her own bill for legal fees that she couldn't pay because Bev had stopped financing her. She walked out knowing that she'd committed fraud. She walked out knowing that the court had seen her crimes. She walked out knowing that she might face criminal charges. She walked out defeated, and I walked out still owning my house. I walked out still owning the thing I'd worked so hard for. I walked out still owning the thing that was truly mine. If your family ever mistakes your kindness for weakness, if they ever think they can take what's yours, remember my story. Remember that the truth matters. Remember that documentation matters. Remember that standing up for yourself matters. The next story might help you save what's yours.